Welcome back. Getting It Back, the story of Cymande is a film delving into the life and legacy of one of the most remarkable yet underappreciated bands of the 20th century. This documentary captures the incredible journey of a band of black British musicians who immigrated from the Caribbean to the UK as children. Joining us now is filmmaker Tim MacKenzie-Smith, who shares with us a little bit about Cymande. And glad to have you, Tim.
Hey, good to be here.
Thank you. And when we talk about Cymande, obviously, as I said in the intro, a lot of people really not so familiar. But when we look at the work and the life that Cymande has brought out, really revolutionary.
That's right. They originally did 3 albums in the 1970s and had quite a bit of success in the US. They got in the top 20 in the R&B charts. They toured with Al Green, and they were the first British artists to play at the Apollo in Harlem. But every time they came back to the UK, they just couldn't get any traction. They couldn't get any gigs, and they sort of took a break that ended up being about 40 years long. And in the meantime, what happened was hip hop started, and of course in the Bronx, was where it was born. And Cymande's music was part of those early days of hip hop. Firstly, in the park jams and the block parties in the late 70s, early 80s, where their song Bra in particular was a really big tune. And then sampling really kicked off in the mid 80s, and their music became really, quite important in those early days of sampling as well, because a lot of the kids who raided their parents' record collections in the 80s, they found music because their records were bought in the US rather than the UK. So, and then subsequent generations of different genres found some. The albums, the original albums, became real collector's items. So it was a kind of the States and New York in particular was really important to kind of keeping their legacy going.
Yeah. And Tim, let me jump in here to ask this question here. When we talk about the influence of Cymande, not just on the culture itself, but on artists who really we know today. Talk to us a little bit about that influence that they've had on contemporary artists, particularly, R&B, hip hop.
That's right. I mean, a lot of artists joined us on the film to talk about how much influence Cymande had on them. Whether it was coming to it as fans or seeing something in the production that they liked. Someone like Cut Chemist, who was part of Jurassic 5, he talked about how the bass lines in Cymande really influenced how he worked as a producer. And many artists found something that they loved in Cymande. And so it was a real joy for me, really, because I'm a big music fan, and I got to speak to a lot of my music heroes to essentially chat with them about people who we had a shared fandom of, So we were very lucky in who we were able to get, because the influence of Cymande is very, very quiet and not very well known. But, it's one of those things that if you know, and it becomes a very personal thing as well. They're like someone's secret password that you share with your friends, and you hope that they share with their friends,
Talk to me about what you're hoping that people will take away from the film.
Well, I hope that if they have never heard of Cymande before, that they'll take away that this is music that they should get to know, and the story of Cymande is one of believing in yourself when other people didn't, especially in their case in the UK, doing their own thing when people were telling them, well, if you want success, you need to sound like someone else, but they believed in their own, doing it their way, and they thought they'd failed ultimately in the 70s. But as it turned out, they were correct. It just took them 50 years to prove it. And so I think that's the most important thing. And for me as a filmmaker, making documentaries about bands that aren't very well known is a very, very difficult thing. And you find times yourself where you think, am I doing the right thing? Is this ever going to get out there? And so I always clung to that, thinking, well, this is the whole story that we're telling is one of perseverance and self-belief, and believing that if you build it, they will come, as it were. So, yeah, I think that's the main thing, if you believe in your art, you keep going, and eventually, hopefully, you find your audience.
Yeah. I got to ask the question about the UK because there is a difference between the UK and US when it comes to music. How was Cymande received on both sides, both the UK and the US?
In the US, they were received pretty well, pretty well. They did tour the with Al Green when he was really at the height of his powers. You know, when he was playing stadiums to like 40, 50, 60,000 people, and they played 5 nights at the Apollo, which is unheard of for a British artist. And you know, they were part of something big in the US, but in the UK, nothing happened at all. They couldn't get on TV, they couldn't get on the radio. And they couldn't get gigs, really, not decent ones. So in those days, it really was. They toured the US twice. They had great times doing it both times, and every time they came back, they think, well, maybe now the UK might get to know us or get to hear about us, but still nothing. So it was really the US and New York in particular were really important parts of this story, really. Initially in the fact that they took to them when they were actually active in the 70s, and then later, as we found out with hip hop and sampling, you know, it was that sort of musical revolution that was born in the Bronx and in New York. It was key to Cymande, their legacy keeping going and ultimately bringing them back.
Yeah. Before I let you go, Tim, I'll ask you the question. Are you optimistic, given the fact that a lot of people don't know about Cymande, but yet still the film is coming out, the film's there, then you've got also new music that's set to be released in 2024. Between the combination of both, are you optimistic that maybe even in the UK and other places that the name of Cymande and the music of Cymande will be more captured?
Yeah, I am optimistic actually, and we already released the movie in theaters in the UK, and it got really good reception. And the noise that the album is going to make, I think, is going to be really important. I think the fact that because of the movie, you know, pretty big record label came on board to then start up the process of the new album. And then hopefully the hopeful success of the new album and the kind of the promotion that the album can give could then hopefully make people pick up on the movie again, you know. So hopefully it will all kind of work in lockstep.
Yeah. Well, Tim MacKenzie-Smith, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, as we said, people will take more light of Cymande. And if you want more information, please go ahead and visit the website at cymandeofficial.com. There you can find out about the music as well as the film. We encourage you don't go anywhere. We do have more open coming up right after this.